Welcome to this very special edition of the KAJ Masterclass Live, the show which ensures that you profit from your time spent here with experts, either through their insights, information, or simply learning from them. And today we have Ben Oofana. He is a healer, an author, and a speaker. Welcome to the show, Ben.
Hi, AJ. Yeah, thank you for having me as a guest.
You are welcome to the show. You are welcome to India in this online form. Ben, I know you have visited India before, so welcome again to India in this online form. And I'm sure not just in India, but a lot of people across the globe will benefit from what we are going to talk about. We'll be talking about how to master the art of emotional healing and transform your heartache into happiness. We'll talk in that backdrop. A lot of people are looking for love in every sphere. Everyone wants love. So I will want to understand from you, then why do you talk about healing, about emotions, about love, happiness? Help us understand so that people know who exactly is Ben Ufan.
Wow. Well, see, a lot of us, we grow up in dysfunctional family backgrounds, and in many instances where we suffer either neglect or trauma, other emotional wounding. And so we carry that, and not knowing how to deal with our own emotional responses or not having the ways or the means to address or heal these wounds, we carry that over into our adulthood. And so as we begin to form attachments, romantic attachments, as we find ourselves getting into relationships, and not only do we have our own wounding, the individuals that we either form attachments to or that we partner with, they have their wounding. And so because of that, we tend to reenact these patterns. We end up with individuals reflecting our early life trauma, or just the fact that a lot of people that we attach to, they lack the capacity to give and to receive love. And as a result, in many instances, it's triggering us emotionally. We find ourselves being injured emotionally by the occurrences, what happens in the relationships. And again, the fact that most of us have never learned to work constructively with our emotions. And so we go through these experiences and it's evoking more sometimes sadness, grief, hurt, anger, frustration. And because we're uncomfortable with those emotions, we tend to suppress or push them down. And that just reinforces the patterns. And so for many of us, it becomes a habitual cycle where we continue to either we stay stuck in a holding pattern in a very dysfunctional relationship, or maybe we cycle through successive relationships, attracting more individuals with the same kinds of patterns or behavioral dynamics. We tend to just repeat that. And so the patterns become more deeply entrenched. Does that make sense so far, what I've said?
Yes, Ben. Indeed. And to understand for people, why is it that some people keep on looking for the right partners, and they continue to attract not so good partners, disastrous partners, and devastating relationships. Whereas some people are so lucky, they call high school sweethearts, childhood sweetheart. They just they as they say, you find love in the first instance itself. Why is it that? Is it a problem with us? Is it the problem with others? How should one, because it impacts, any sort of a heartbreak or rejection impacts us in very difficult ways or different ways.
Wow, that's a very good question. There's a combination of factors. Sometimes some of us are just fortunate. When we're coming of age, as we're coming, into our latter teens and up into our 20s, and then we begin to form these romantic attachments. Some of us are just fortunate to happen upon an individual who's a good match, that is kind, is caring, that has that capacity to love and be loved. at at this young age, we're vulnerable, we have limited life experiences. And so if we happen upon somebody who happens to have narcissistic tendencies or happens to have problems with alcohol and other drug use, and being so naive and not knowing what we're getting ourselves into, it's easy for us to fall into that. If we have grown up, if we come from a background with parents who were either abusive, neglectful, a parent that abandoned, say like a father or mother just left, and so we were abandoned by that parent, and we carry those emotional wounds, that increases our likelihood of attracting an individual or multiple individuals into our lives who are going to reenact these patterns repeatedly. So it could be either, in a sense. Again, that naivete, that vulnerability, just not knowing what we're getting ourselves into. We could attract the disastrous partners. It could be a carryover reenactment of that pattern. And sometimes, as I said, some individuals are just fortunate that someone just happens to be in their path who turns out to be a good, loving partner who just has that capacity to love and be loved. And spending a lot of time both in India and Sri Lanka, as well as, being back in the United States a lot, you see the differences. Like in South Asia, you have a lot more of the arranged marriages even still. And depending on the matchmaking, where sometimes the parents make a good choice and understand their child, and I know of instances where that love grew over time. Other times I see it because having a lot of friends during the time that I've spent in both India and Sri Lanka, and knowing the intimate details of the relationships, because one, they're friends, and also because I've worked with quite a few people as well. So sometimes it could be a match made in heaven, and sometimes it's disastrous. And I also see a lot of times where people are forced into these arranged marriages. The child doesn't really have that much say, and yet they're supposedly married to that person, but they're having all these affairs on the side. So it's a trade-off, because sometimes the arranged marriages could work really well. Sometimes they're disastrous. And then the love marriages where people are choosing their partner, that can go either way as well. So there's no hard, fast rule in a sense.
Absolutely, absolutely. But one rule of life is we all need love in one form or the other. Either
True.
in family love, or especially in relationships and all. So how do in today's time people find love? How do they keep themselves love ready? What is it that they need to do so that they are love ready? Because love is also fine to find them. Is it because many a times we feel that we have our own issues of the past, of the present, the way we perceive ourselves, and we think love is not going to happen in our lives. So is what are the things that can one do to make them feel confident enough that they will find love and good relationships in their life, so that when Cupid starts working for you, he is not working alone, you are also working with him. How does that happen in today? Secondly, along with that is that along with love there are heartbreaks also. Some things may not work for you. How should one look at it? People see today, in today's time, there is a lot of this word called ghosting. It can happen in dating. It can, people may just forget about you, that you are waiting for them. How do you deal with that? The relationships may not go well, there are heartbreaks, you carry that burden over. There are so many things that are woven around love. And sometimes it will be good, the first time very good, the second time, maybe even the third time is when it will work for you. How do you look at the things, that the way you look at, you talk about all those things in a very different manner. Help us understand, so that people can look at it. How should they look at it? Look it from a Western point of view, look it from an Indian point of view, look it from your point of view. Help us understand this all mysteries of love and relationships.
When we carry this emotional wounding, maybe it's some of it carries over from childhood, or even if we started out, we had a good start in life with parents who were very loving and supportive, very nourishing, and then we took some real hits later on, as we grew into our teens and adulthood. Maybe we got involved with somebody who was very hurtful, abusive, narcissistic, or they were unfaithful, they were cheating on us and lying and deceptive, things like that. So when we experience these events and it elicits very painful emotional responses, again, a lot of times people not knowing how to work constructively with their emotions, the mistake they made is by suppressing those emotions, by distracting themselves with many ways. You see in America, the United States, there's a lot of people self-medicate with alcohol and pot or weed, marijuana, whatever, other recreational drugs, pharmaceuticals. People go shopping. I mean, just social media, internet. So those kinds of distractions, again, just suppressing emotions and jumping into another relationship. One relationship doesn't work, and so they go on. Now you have these apps. I think you have it in India now too, Tinder. You could just swipe and you
Yes,
jump
yes.
into another relationship. And so in doing so, what happens is you're never really giving yourself the opportunity to be truly present with your own authentic feeling, emotional responses to what occurred. Your life experiences, your subsequent cognitive, your emotional responses, you need to digest it. Like the food you eat has to be digested. If you don't digest the food you eat, it backs up in your body. And then you end up with all kinds of compacted bowel and all kinds of other digestive problems, disorders. So your life experiences, you need to digest that. You need to digest your emotional responses. So whether we suffered abuse going back to our childhood, if we end up in a relationship with someone who is just hurtful, abusive, says and does things that are very harmful, and it elicits this painful emotional response, we need to be able to be present with those emotions. Part of it is like acknowledging what's happened, where those feelings are situated in your body. Bring your full awareness to where you feel the emotions. Is it in your chest cavity, down your abdomen, somewhere else, other location in your body? Dive deep into those locations, breathing softly and deeply. And your body and mind, there's this innate healing intelligence. Same healing intelligence, you get a cut or bruise, and after some days or week or weeks, and it is healing those injuries. And if the wound isn't too deep, a lot of times there's no scar. You don't even see a sign of it. So we need to be able to work constructively with our authentic emotional responses to digest these events, these responses. In doing so, it engages this creative problem solving parts of our brain, our mind, where we work through, we gain insights, we gain understandings, we gain the insight we need to resolve those issues and grow from it. We also need to be making use of therapeutic interventions. We need to be realistic because there are limits as well to our body and mind's innate healing intelligence. It could take us a certain distance, but we need intervention to take us beyond to facilitate the healing that we cannot fully do on our own. So interventions, examples, some of us will start out in psychotherapy, for instance, because we need the cognitive understanding of the dysfunction, either from family, our current relationship, of our emotional wounding. So the cognitive piece is a part of it. Could be one part. There are many more parts. Sometimes we need to make use of interventions like deep tissue body work or therapeutic massage that helps us to connect with our bodies. A lot of that emotion remains trapped in our bodies. The deep tissue body work will help to bring those emotions to the surface rather than just staying trapped in our body. It brings them to the surface. As they come to the surface, we can work with them. Sometimes other therapeutic means like Ayurvedic medicine. I've done panchakarma, for instance, and panchakarma can help to also facilitate the release of a lot of these emotions that are trapped in our bodies. In India, originating from your culture, you have what some of the pandits or the Hindu priests do, the pujas, the yagyas. I've had that
Right.
done for me as well. And that can have a very powerful healing effect as far as bringing a lot of these emotions, helping you to process the emotional experiences, the deep emotional wounds. And then I come from a tradition, I spent years living among Native Americans, what some of you folks in South Asia refer to as Red Indian people. I'm trained by a traditional Red Indian or Native American doctor from the Kiowa tribe. And like in India, where you have the yogis and the sadhus, and that produce these cities, if I pronounce this right.
Right, right.
Okay, so there are people among the Native Americans who possess very different kinds of gifts or healing powers. In our training, we go 4 days and nights alone in the mountains without food and water. And doing so, we're making this kind of sacrifice, you might say. And there's like this other extraordinarily powerful presence that will come into our bodies. And for me, it was like a near-death experience. And I would be like having these parts of my life flashing through my eyes or my mind very rapidly. I would be reliving some of those past traumas or deeply wounding experiences, digesting them. And I'd come out the other side and much lighter, much freer, and it would be building this whole new foundation. Most people are not going to go through that intensity of experience. This is what you call austerities. And I think you use that term in India as well, that some of the yogis would do these extreme austerities. But those of us who go through this training, we work as conduits, within, like you have doctors of Ayurvedic medicine, doctors of Chinese medicine, for instance. So we have those of us within this traditional, I'm actually white or Caucasian, but at 17, I was a runaway and I took off, and I had, from early childhood, I had this desire to go live among the Native American people, this Red Indian people. And so I ended up going into the ceremonies with the Native elders. And that's where I met this old Native doctor who took me as an apprentice. So I work as a conduit, allowing this healing power to work through me. And so it will take a lot of these traumatic or deeply wounding experiences and transmute them so that the person can digest them. It's transformed in a way so they come out much lighter. And I see people letting go, like first healing those, digesting, healing those very painful experiences where somebody was unfaithful, or maybe they were subjected to domestic violence, other kinds of heart-rending experiences. In America, there's something very prevalent. It's called ghosting. You're in a relationship and that person just vanishes. They disappear. They're gone. No explanation. They're just gone.
Even in podcasting, there is ghosting.
In podcasting, there's ghosting too.
Yeah,
Yeah.
guest ghost you, host ghost you.
Yeah, that's and partly because, you know, with this age of the internet too, and all the social media and all that, and what's happening with that, I know I'm going a little tangent here, but
Fine.
it's all this like massive amounts of digital content that's we're being flooded with it. And what it does is it starts to rewire our brains. And so it changes the neurostructure of the brain. And it's purposefully designed, it is engineered to trigger this rapid release of dopamine, you know, the reward chemical. And so what happens is like, oh, the next thing and the next thing and the next thing. And so a lot of times people go, in the moment, they see an opportunity or an option. It's like, oh, that's cool. But then when they keep getting these continual dopamine releases, it's rewiring the brain so that people's attention span becomes incredibly short and they just jump from one thing to another, to another, to another. And that's disastrous too for intimate relationships, because there's a very short, you know, there's this shortening of the attention span. And we need to have this, what you refer to as constancy in relationships. You know, when as a child, young child, from infancy, as a toddler, through childhood up into adolescence with your parents, you need this constancy so that, you know, the parent's there for you. They're focused on you. They're concerned for your well-being. They're paying attention to their needs. But when they're so distracted and they can't be present with you, then that results in emotional wounding. You know, if the child can't, if the parents are not present. But then in our current adult relationships with this short attention span, it's people can, we use the term in America, hook up. So you meet somebody, you get involved, but with the short attention span, you could easily lose interest, you get distracted, and the emotional bonds are just not as deep. They are not as substantial. I do find it a bit better. I mean, my experience, like we all have our types or preferences, and I've tended to do a lot better in relationships with women from South Asian women, both India and Sri Lanka. And just we all have our preferences, but I found a greater warmth and a greater depth of connection than what I've experienced for the most part in the United States. But in the United States, the bombardment from the media, all this like constant digital input is much greater. And I think there's also the fact what you call resonance. There's another factor that is very key in relationships is resonance, because when we resonate with certain groups of people or certain individuals, we're going to have a stronger, a deeper bond with them. But also, as I said, going back a bit, when we have this constant stimulus and it's changing the biochemical makeup and the neural structure of our brain, it makes it extraordinarily difficult to focus. And that affects us in so many areas of our lives. And it really hurts us in terms of our ability to establish longer term, more meaningful relationships. And the other thing too is what I notice over the years is that because I began my practice before we had smartphones and before we had social media, I began training like 40 years ago. I'm older than I look, for that matter. But when I started my practice, there is much more of a consistency. But what I found is that, again, people's attention span is shortening. And it's like it makes it difficult. We lose touch with that authentic core of our being because our attention is being constantly drawn into these devices.
Right. Right.
We
One
covered
last
a lot of things in just one
no,
question.
absolutely, absolutely. Uh, yeah. Is your answer, or can I ask you another question here?
Yeah, as many as you
Yeah.
like. Yeah.
Right. Right. One last question I want to understand from you, Ben, is that people talk about finding love, being their best version of themselves.
Mm-hmm.
People say that that love makes you the best in whatever you are, the way you are. It brings the best out of you.
Mm-hmm.
And many people nowadays think that, okay, I should be presenting the best out of myself to the people so that I can meet the right person. How do you calibrate both these things? Do I become the best version before and try and find love, or will love make bring out the best in me when I find love?
Wow. When you happen upon an individual with whom you truly resonate and someone that does have that capacity to love and be loved, who is what I refer to as growth oriented, that they have very good qualities about them. They do, those individuals say, if we happen to partner with them, they will bring out, they will inspire us to be our best selves. But I know from my experience growing into adulthood and the kinds of individuals I attracted, initially reflecting a lot of the emotional wounding that I carried, it's I didn't have the luxury of just having somebody come into my life that brought out the best in me. It's I was attracting individuals who reflected in many ways my early wounding, my uh, the traumas I experienced earlier in my life. And so because of that, I took that as a reflection. Now, and many people they resist these kinds of experiences and they contract around those emotional wounds and maybe they close their heart and everything. But I took it as a reflection. It's like, okay, so I attracted that type of individual and some of these things are very hurtful and it's evoking a lot of these deeply painful emotions. But as I came to the realization, as I work with these emotions, and I took it like, okay, this is an opportunity to heal. This person that I attracted is reflecting back to me my own woundedness. And so as I did the work, as I worked with the practices that I described, I shared a small amount of it in some of the interventions. And as I took the steps to heal, I became stronger, I became more resilient. So I went through this evolution as I did so. And as I went through the evolution, then I began to attract healthier individuals into my own life. And so as I attract these healthier individuals, companions, what I found is that, yes, that did nourish me. There is a nourishment you derived that feeds you in a sense. And so that helps to facilitate your growth. But there are a lot of us initially, we may not have that advantage. Some people are just maybe, I guess it's a matter of perspective, but say they're fortunate enough right off in the beginning, they attract somebody and they have a really good, supportive, loving partner. But even then, sometimes you could take them for granted and you can just get complacent and turn into a couch potato or just not even really try that much. I think a big part of it, too, again, is what I referred to earlier, growth orientation. And that's going to depend on each of us as individuals. I think it's very important not to just wait for somebody to make your life wonderful. I came to the realization that what I needed to do is that, okay, like I have this my own unique individual life purpose. And I think this is true for many of the people in the listening audience as well. that many of us, we have our individual life purpose. And so it's very important that we, to the best of our ability, it's like, what is our deepest desire? Our deepest desires in life are connected to our purpose, our mission in life. And so as we decide, like, okay, what do I most want? What means the most to me in life? And so I'm going to strive to develop myself to the best of my abilities and to realize my true potential, to fulfill my purpose. And as you do that, and you're going to encounter all kinds of challenges, difficulties, roadblocks along the way. Things will blow up in your face. Sometimes you'll feel you're not getting anywhere. Maybe you're failing, but you pick yourself up and you just keep going. You keep putting one foot in front of the other. And if it hurts like hell at times, you take the steps, you work with those emotions, you process them, you make use of the interventions, you grow stronger, and then you keep striving to create what it is you truly want in your life. And as you do that, that helps you to, enables you to develop this foundation. And as you develop this inner core strength, you develop this resilience about you. And the more you do that, and you become the best version of yourself, you become much more likely, you have a much higher likelihood of attracting the type of individual who is a better match for you. And also, you're more likely to be in the places where you're going to encounter the type of individual who's a good match for you. Sometimes you need to be in the right place at the right time. Yeah, so it's not just one or the other. It's, on one hand, we need to take the initiative and not just wait for someone else. It's our own initiative to be the best version of you, to be the best person you can be. And that's of your choosing, of your own volition. And then if you're so fortunate to have someone who nourishes you, then that's even better. Because a lot of times we could be moving along through our lives and we may go through some periods of time. And this is very important to understand, that just because you're alone for some periods of time, or you had some relationships that blew up on you, it doesn't mean that you're wrong or bad, or you're a failure, or you're defective or something like that. We have these life paths, and it's not always easy. Sometimes it's like, as we say in America, shit happens. And you take whatever happens, no matter what it is, and say, how can I use this to grow? How can I use this to evolve? And again, put the focus on yourself, healing and evolving. And sometimes, even if you're in a relationship, there are times you are going to outgrow, you're going to evolve beyond the person you're with, the person maybe you're married to or living with them or whatever. Sometimes they're going to stay stuck down there in this kind of lower functioning place, and you're just not on the same wavelength anymore. You can't quite meet. And so sometimes you may outgrow or evolve beyond somebody, and you may have to let go of somebody. But sometimes we attract people into our lives for a time, and that relationship plays an important role in our life at that time in our life, but we may outgrow or evolve beyond that individual as well. So does all that make sense, what I'm saying?
Yes, indeed, Ben. It
Okay.
does make right, right, and a lot of people will certainly, benefit from all this discussion and all this. But then love is such a vast word. People have been trying to understand it fully all through the ages. Though many say it is very simple, it's part of us. It's just the way we want to look at it. But for those people who want to learn more about it, more about healing, about all this related to love, heartbreaks, and relationships, what is the best way for them to connect with you so that they get the best from you?
The best way to connect with me is to go to my website. Initially, it's my name, benoofana.com. So again, just go to my name, benoofana.com, and you can find me that way. So I would recommend doing that. If that's the best means to reach me for now.
Absolutely, absolutely. With this, it's a wrap on this very special edition of the KJ Masterclass Live. Thank you so much indeed for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. I very much enjoyed engaging with you.